She thought it was just another walk to school, a path she had taken 100 times before. But on this day, one glance, one cruel whisper, and one hateful act would change everything. In a town where silence often spoke louder than truth, her pain was brushed aside, her voice ignored. What happened to her wasn't an accident. It was a mirror held up to a society still chained by prejudice. And the question remains, when injustice stares us in the face, do we look away, or do we finally listen? It was supposed to be just another morning. Maya, a 17-year-old high school senior, rushed out the door with her backpack half-zipped and her shoes untied, laughing as her little brother teased her for being late again. She was bright, ambitious, and full of dreams that stretched far beyond the small town she called home. Teachers admired her work ethic, friends leaned on her kindness, and her mother often said she carried a light that no one could dim. On most days, her walk to school was uneventful, past the corner store, across the faded crosswalk, and down the tree-lined street where neighbors waved from their porches. It was a routine she trusted, a path she could follow without thinking. But beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary town lay something darker, something that waited for the right moment to show itself. Because while Maya saw the world as a place full of opportunity, not everyone saw her the same way. Whispers followed her in hallways, looks lingered longer than they should, and there were days she felt the weight of being different press harder against her shoulders. On that particular morning, as the sun climbed over the rooftops and the air buzzed with the sound of distant traffic, Maya didn't notice the shadow watching from across the street. She didn't see the glances, didn't hear the muttered words that carried more venom than she could imagine. What she thought was just another day in her young life was about to become the day everything changed. Maya's laughter from that morning still lingered in her mind as she walked down the street, the chill of autumn brushing against her skin. Her backpack bounced on her shoulders, a rhythm as familiar as her heartbeat. But today, something felt different. The street that usually comforted her with its routine seemed quieter, heavier. She noticed a car creeping slowly behind her, its engine low and steady, like a growl that wouldn't end. At first, she told herself it was nothing, just someone heading in the same direction. But when she quickened her pace, the car matched her. The window rolled down, and voices spilled out, mocking, sharp, laced with words she had heard before but prayed she'd never hear again. Slurs, insults. Each one struck her like a stone hurled at her chest. She gripped her backpack straps tighter, her breath uneven. A man leaned out, grinning, his eyes narrowed with cruelty. "You don't belong here," he spat, his words cutting deeper than the cold air. Maya kept walking, refusing to turn, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. But inside, her heart raced. Each step felt like moving through mud, heavy and slow, while their laughter grew louder behind her. At the corner store, where she usually stopped for a snack, she thought of ducking inside, but the car pulled up beside the entrance, blocking her way. The men inside weren't laughing now. They were staring, their silence more dangerous than the insults had been. Maya froze, clutching the straps of her bag, willing herself not to tremble. A woman passed by on the sidewalk, glanced at the scene, and quickly looked away. Another man stepped out of the store, saw what was happening, then kept walking as though nothing existed. That was the part that hurt most, the silence of those who chose not to see. Finally, the car door opened, and one of them stepped out. His boots hit the pavement hard, each step toward her echoing in her ears. Maya's pulse thundered. She thought of her mother's words, of her brother waiting for her at home, of all the dreams she carried in her chest like fragile glass. The man stopped just inches from her, leaning down so close she could smell the smoke on his breath. "People like you," he sneered, "never last long here." The world around her blurred. The sound of passing traffic faded. All that remained was his voice, dripping with hate, and her own fear pressing against her ribs like a cage. She wanted to run, to scream, to fight, but her feet wouldn't move. And then, without warning, another voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. A voice that made the man straighten, made the others shift uneasily in their seats. Maya turned her head slowly, her eyes wide. Someone had finally stepped in. But whether they had come to protect her or to make things worse, she didn't yet know. The voice that cut through the tension belonged to a man standing across the street. He was tall, steady, and his eyes locked on the group with a force that made them hesitate. "That's enough," he said, his tone carrying a weight Maya had never heard before. For a moment, she thought relief had come, but then she saw the smirk spread across the face of the man in front of her. He stepped back, glancing at his friends, and laughed. "Look at this. Our little hero wants to play savior." The others piled out of the car now, boots hitting the pavement like thunder. They surrounded Maya, boxing her in. Her breath caught in her throat. The stranger across the street moved closer, but he was just one man against four. The taunts turned sharper, uglier. One of them shoved Maya's shoulder, hard enough to send her stumbling. Another snatched her backpack and dumped it onto the ground, books and papers scattering across the sidewalk. The sight of her belongings, her hard work, her future, being trampled ignited a pain deeper than fear. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but her voice felt stolen. The world blurred with the sound of their laughter, the weight of their words. "You'll never belong. Don't you get it?" One hissed, leaning so close she could see the veins in his neck. The man who had spoken up earlier finally rushed forward, stepping between her and the group. "Enough," he barked, his voice trembling with anger. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Would they back down, or would this spiral into something far worse? Maya's heart pounded so hard it hurt. She looked at the faces around her, the sneers, the silence of bystanders who refused to step in, the one stranger who dared to stand. And in that frozen second, she realized the truth. This moment would define her life forever. But what happened next, whether she would walk away stronger or never walk away at all, was a question that hung heavy in the air. The confrontation ended as quickly as it began. The men, sensing the growing eyes of onlookers and the determination of the stranger who refused to step aside, finally retreated. Their laughter echoed as they climbed back into the car, but the venom in their words lingered long after the engine roared away. Maya stood frozen, her belongings scattered, her heart still pounding in her chest. The stranger helped her gather her books, his silence saying more than words could. Neighbors who had once turned away now stared from their windows, too late to matter. And as Maya walked home, clutching her torn backpack, the world she thought she knew no longer felt safe. That day left a scar, not one the eye could see, but one etched deep within her. She learned that racism wasn't always hidden in shadows. Sometimes it walked boldly in daylight, daring anyone to challenge it. And she learned something else, that silence can wound just as deeply as hate. Maya's story isn't just her own. It belongs to countless others who have felt the sting of being told they don't belong, who have walked streets where their very presence is treated like a crime. Her pain is part of a larger truth, one that demands to be seen, heard, and remembered. Because racism doesn't end with one confrontation. It lingers in the silence, in the looks, in the moments when voices stay quiet. And the question we must all ask is this: when the next Maya finds herself surrounded, will we turn away, or will we finally stand? The answer will shape not just her story, but all of ours.